Welcome to U.S. Immigration TV. Now, I've received many comments, likes, and shares on my Facebook page about the monthly visa bulletin or the priority dates. So I've decided to create a video to explain and walk you through the August 2021 priority dates. Now, I've already posted a video on this channel on how the visa bulletin and the priority date system works. For example, how to search or find it on Google and where to access it. And so that previous video is like a step-by-step instructional guide explaining the system and how to understand the dates provided. So I think you should watch that video for a sort of a background or as a primer. But today, I'll focus on the August 2021 priority dates for both the number 1, visa issuance or final action dates, and number 2, application filing or dates for filing dates. And I'm going to explain what these two charts mean a little later in the video. But first, a little bit of background on the visa bulletin. Simply put, the visa bulletin is basically a monthly chart published by the U.S. State Department that tells a person their place in line for either a green card or an immigrant visa based on the person's priority date. For family petitions, the priority date is typically the date the petition was filed with the USCIS. And for employment cases, the priority date is typically the date the perm application is filed with the Department of Labor, unless, of course, your job is exempt, and in that case, it is the date the case is filed with the USCIS, exempt, for example, nurses or physical therapists. The application filing date, or the dates for filing, is a relatively new chart. It's only a couple of years old. And what that means is if you are outside the U.S., the application filing date is the date when the National Visa Center or the NVC starts to send you paperwork to start filling out and paying fees and forms. Again, that's for those of you who are outside the U.S. So therefore, something very important, if you have moved since the petition was filed, make sure that you keep your address current with the NVC so you'll receive their notices, because typically they give you 1 year to respond, and if you don't respond, they cancel the case. For those of you who are in the U.S. and your priority date is current, it means you can possibly file for adjustment of status and get your work authorization if you are eligible and the USCIS designates that chart for a particular month. So if you will notice, and we'll show you in a minute, the application filing dates are typically a few months earlier or sooner than the final action date. However, make sure you're eligible to file for adjustment of status. You may have issues in your case. For example, if you're out of status, maybe you have fraud in connection with the way you entered the U.S., or you have certain crimes or a previous deportation order. Now, moving to the final action or visa issuance dates. Those are the old priority dates that have been around for decades. It's the date when your visa may be issued, provided your priority date is earlier than the date on the final action date chart. So therefore, even if your priority date is current on the dates for filing chart, you still have to wait for the priority date to be current on the final action date chart for your visa or your green card to be issued. Okay, now let's move on to the August 2021 priority dates, and it does bring some great news. First of all, the August 2021 priority dates continue to provide great news for workers in the EB3, which is skilled or professional, and the other worker or unskilled categories. Unskilled such as caregivers, housekeepers, and the like. The priority dates for all countries except India and China are current. And this even includes the Philippines, which historically had many, many years backlog for working visas. So what this means is that visas are available regardless of the person's priority date or when their case was filed with the Department of Labor. Therefore, if a person is being petitioned by an employer and their I-140 employment-based petition has been approved or is even pending, they could possibly be eligible to file for adjustment of status and work authorization provided you are otherwise eligible for adjustment of status. And I make that clear to you. It doesn't mean that just because your date is current on the application filing date, you can automatically file. There could be other issues, such as, are you in status? Are you out of status? Do you have fraud, previous crimes, etc.? People with approved or pending I-140 petitions should probably see an attorney about their eligibility to file for adjustment now that the priority dates for these employment-based categories are current. Also, for family petitions, great news for spouses and minor children, meaning under 21 years of age, of green card holders. The priority date is current, meaning visas are available for spouses and minor children of green card holders, just as though they were U.S. citizens. However, again, the issue has to be, even though the priority date is current, if you're in the U.S., make sure you're eligible to file for adjustment of status because, again, you may have status issues, fraud, and things like that. Now what I'm going to do is go through the priority dates for August 2021. And on the screen are the priority dates. I've just picked the Philippines as an example, but if you are from a different country, the same would apply to you. First are the various categories. For family, F1, single adult child of U.S. citizen. F2A, spouse and minor children of green card holder. F2B, adult single child of green card holder. And that's, a lot of people don't realize it, but immigrants can petition single adult children. They do not have to wait to become U.S. citizens. The next category is F3, which is married child of U.S. citizen, and then finally F4, brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. Moving to the employment-based categories, the main ones we're going to be talking about are EB3, professionals and skilled workers, and the other one is other worker or unskilled workers. And now let's talk about, to give you an example, I'm going to compare the difference or the movement between the priority dates for July and August 2021. Let's just take it for example, the final action dates, all right? In July of 2021, the F1 priority date was February 22, 2012. Now, for August, it's March 1. So it moved, what, about 8 days or so? F2A current, it's same. For F2B, for July, it was October 15, 2011, and for August, it was October 22, so it moved about 7 days. Married children of U.S. citizens, it was the same for both July and August, and then for F4, for July, it was June 22, 2002, and then for August 2021, it was August 8, 2002, so it moved about 1.5 months. The employment-based cases, July and August, they were both current. But what you see here, it is very hard to predict when a person's priority date can become current. You know, for example, some of the cases in 1 month, it only moved forward 8 days. So for example, if your priority date in F1 is 5 years away, and it only moves 8 days a month, it can take a long time. But every single month, it has different type of movements. Sometimes it can move a few days. Sometimes it can move a few months. I remember back at the end of 2010, priority dates were like moving 1 year every month until it finally retrogressed or moved back several years. So they are hard to predict. We just have to wait until the priority dates are released each month, and then we can chart the movement. But it is very important that if you have a petition, that you monitor the priority dates, because you don't want a situation where your priority date becomes current and you sit on it, because you run the risk of your case being terminated by the National Visa Center. Another thing about priority dates, whether for August 2021 or every month, is that every month the USCIS decides which of the two charts it will use in connection with a person's ability to file for adjustment of status, whether it's going to be the final action dates or the application filing dates. And for August 2021, employment-based cases use the final action date, and for family cases, they will use the dates for filing, except the F2A category, where they may use the final action date, which is current. And if you look at the chart again, let's just take the Philippines for August 2021, and for F1, the application filing date is April 22, 2015, whereas the final action date is March 1, 2012. So if they are using the application filing date or dates for filing, if a person has a priority date earlier than April 22, 2015, they can file for adjustment, which is almost like 3 years before their final action date is current. So meaning for approximately 3 years, they could apply for the work authorization, keep renewing it each year until eventually their final action date becomes current, provided that they are otherwise eligible for adjustment of status. Sometimes the final action date and the application filing date separated by just a few months. Others, in this case, you can see, for example, it's 3 years earlier. So again, as you can see, sometimes the USCIS uses one chart, or sometimes they use the other chart. And if you file your case based on the wrong chart, the case could be rejected. However, I want to emphasize and I want to caution people that even if your priority date is current, let's say on the dates for filing chart, it does not necessarily mean you're automatically eligible to file for adjustment of status. There could be other factors that have to be taken into account. For example, if you're in the US, are you out of status? Being out of status could make you ineligible to file for adjustment of status. Did you commit fraud in entering the US, such as an assumed name visa, in which case you might need a waiver? Did you commit crimes in the past? Do you have a prior deportation or removal order? Or did you get married, which could result in your case being reclassified from single to married, where the waiting time will be much longer? Or is there other information that has to be updated or evaluated? So that's why I think it's important that before you file, and if you have any questions about your eligibility, you should consult with an attorney who can evaluate your case, determine your eligibility for adjustment of status, or see if there are any other forms of relief available for you, such as waivers, fraud waiver, or if you have to go back to your home country, a provisional waiver. Now, I understand how complex and confusing visa bulletins and priority dates can be and which chart to use. So that's why we presented you with this video, for you to understand them in plain terms. Once again, if you like this information and you find it useful to yourself, your case, or to somebody you know, such as a family member under petition, friends, or co-workers, don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, click the red button, subscribe. I'm Michael Gurfinkel, and thanks for watching U.S. Immigration TV.